All right, we are back at Vanland, and today we're doing a video that I personally have been very excited to do for quite a while now. We're going to be talking today about water heaters and how you can get hot water in your van. The reason I've been so excited about this video is because I think we've come up with the absolute best way to get hot water in a Sprinter van, but it's a little bit untraditional. I don't see a lot of people doing this, so we've actually put off filming this video for quite some time, because I wanted to get plenty of these systems into our vans and road tested to make sure they are 100% reliable and a good idea for our clients to get hot water in the van. First, I want to talk about a couple of the common ways that people get hot water in their vans. So I would say the number one easiest way, at least on paper, is to use something like an electric water heater. These are water heaters that are actually designed to kind of go underneath a cabinet in your bathroom or kitchen, and it heats water on demand using an electric element right under the sink. On the surface, since these are only a couple $100s, I think a lot of people think, hey, there's my solution. We're just going to put a small electric water heater in and then we'll have hot water in the van. A couple problems with that we have found is that they use a ton of energy. So they're drawing often over 1,000 watts, and it takes a good 30 to 45 minutes, even an hour, to heat up the tank. So if you do the math on that, you're looking at burning through an entire 100 amp hour battery pretty quickly just to get a few gallons of hot water, which to us is not a great trade-off. Even though the electric hot water heater seems to be kind of a simple solution and a cheap one on the surface, we actually don't think it's a great solution and don't really use it in any of our vans. The second way that people typically get hot water in a van is to use something like a hydronic heater. So Espar, we use them for our air heaters. They also make a hydronic heater which heats air and water. This is a fairly decent solution, except for the fact that it is somewhat complicated to install, and it's also very expensive. The unit itself will cost in the neighborhood of $4,500, plus the install is going to be several times more difficult than just installing an Espar air heater. So I would say the average bill to get that type of system installed is going to be north of $7,000, and that's more than most people are willing to pay just to get hot water in the van. So while the Rixson system using the Espar is a really good and reliable system, it's complicated and expensive, so we also don't use that a lot on our van builds. The third way that people attempt to get hot water in the van is to use something like a gas on-demand water heater. Again, these are typically designed for home use, and basically you have a gas tank hooked up to a heater, the water flows through it, and as it does, it heats it up. This is a fairly economical way to get hot water, but at the same time, you have to do a lot of sort of modifications to the van in order to vent the fumes out and to make sure it's not explosive. You're also adding propane to the equation, and for these reasons, it's probably, it's not a system that we use very often either. So those are the three most common ways that we see other people getting hot water into a van. So if you guys have used any of the methods that we just talked about, or you're about to build a van and you kind of already have your method for getting hot water picked out, then please let us know. We'd love to hear your experience if you have some, or your ideas if you're just thinking about adding hot water right now. But our favorite way, and the one that we are doing now on more and more vans all the time, is to actually use a heat transfer system. And let me tell you how this works. So the engine heats up and it has coolant that runs through the engine to cool the engine off. We take that coolant line and run it back into a heat transfer tank. So the heat from the coolant is transferred directly into the water and stored there. And from there, the pump will pump the hot water into your system. So this is a really elegant way to get hot water because basically it's free energy. You already have heated fluid from your engine, and you can use that and basically pull the heat off of it into a water tank. A couple of the things that we really love about this method are that, number one, there's basically no moving parts. The coolant is pumped through the heat transfer with the pump that's already installed in the van. So no moving parts means less places for things to go wrong. Number two, it's free energy. Basically, you don't have to use propane or battery power. Every time you drive your van, you have hot water in your tank. The third thing is that the water is extremely hot. It can get up to 145, 150 degrees. The transfer tank itself has a mixer on it, so you can bring that water temperature down to something that's not going to be so scalding. But basically, you have such hot water that even 5 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours after the engine has shut off, there is still going to be a significant amount of heat in the water. Basically, this system, I like to think of it as kind of the smartest solution to get hot water in your van. It's, to me, like if you gave the problem to an engineer or the military, this is the solution they would come up with, simply because it's reliable, it's free energy, and it just kind of makes sense. The last reason we really love this is because we actually mount everything for this system underneath the van. So it takes up essentially no room inside your van, which is, again, a really elegant way to make your van a hot water, a hot water haven, a hot tub. It's a way to get a hot tub in your van. No, I just want to give you a quick tour of how this system works so you can kind of wrap your head around it. If you haven't seen these systems before, we call it like a heat transfer system. You might also hear it called a calorifier. That's more of a yachting term, which also these systems are used quite frequently in yachting and boating. So they are well established, and it's something that is not a kind of slapped together solution. This is a well established solution. We just don't see it a lot in the van builds. So basically wanted to introduce you guys to the method that we use, and let's take a look at kind of how this all works. Okay? Okay, inside the engine bay here is where the process starts, and it may seem a little daunting, but all we're really doing is basically cutting the heater hose line and splicing in an additional loop. So if you can imagine the heater hose running this way, we cut it and put a loop in that brings it around to the tank and then right back to where it came from. So that's a pretty simple solution, but people get a little nervous about cutting into their heater hose line. We totally understand. It is important that this is done by a professional or somebody knows how to work on a vehicle. But in reality, it's not that complicated, and it's a pretty simple job to do that. Okay, the other part of the system is mounted right here underneath the slider door. So we're gonna go under there and take a look. Basically what you're gonna be looking at is a 5-gallon insulated tank, and that's where the heater hose is gonna run into and transfer the heat. And then there's a a cold water line going into that tank and a hot water line coming out. So it's pretty simple. Let's take a look at it under here. All right, here we are. So let's take a look. This is the tank itself. We've got it mounted here up as close to the frame as possible. And as you can see, it doesn't really ride that low. And quite simple, you've got the coolant coming in here that's hot. It's gonna run into the tank, transfer the heat into here, and then the return hose comes back. Simply cold water coming in, hot water coming out. And then you have a mixer here so that you can control the temperature. So that's it. Another thing that I wanted to discuss with you guys are some of the common concerns that our clients have when we're talking about this type of water heater system. Since it's a little bit different and a lot of people haven't seen this one demonstrated, there are some issues that come up, and I just want to go over those with you guys right now. Okay, so the number one concern that people have is simply connecting to the coolant system of the van. Technically, we would be making a cut in the coolant lines and plumbing that into a new loop, and some people have a concern with that, which we totally understand. It's very important that your coolant system works correctly, and if there was to be any issue with it, it would mean that you would have to shut down the vehicle and potentially take it in to get a service. So to address that concern, I just want to make clear that it is very important that this is done correctly. The coolant system needs to be cut into at the right spot, and the loop that's added into it has to be well protected. to make sure that it's not going to be, none of the fittings are gonna come loose, or it's not gonna be damaged potentially by something underneath the van. So basically, even though it is a very valid concern, if it's done properly, you really don't have to worry about that. The second concern is regarding freezing. So people understandably have a concern if there's a 5-gallon water tank underneath the van and you're in freezing temperatures, will the water heater freeze and crack when you're not using it? There is an outlet that's very simple to empty all the water out of the tank right on the tank itself. You simply turn a valve, all the water comes out, and basically there's no chance for it to freeze after that. And concern number 3 is how far does it hang down underneath the vehicle? Because obviously people are concerned about the amount of clearance they have, and they don't want rocks or sticks cutting the heater hose lines. So to address that, we do our best to put the hoses up as high as possible underneath the vehicle, and we strap them in place and protect them where we need to so that nothing can basically cut the lines or make the hoses come loose. Hey, puppy. And finally, just so you guys know, these heat exchangers also come with two heater coils in them. Typically one for 110 volt AC power and one for 12 volt DC power. So even though this is a unit that primarily takes the heat off of the engine and puts it into the water, you can also plug this directly into shore power or your battery system if you like. So you're really not giving up any of the options to heat your water. So we think that's really cool because basically if you plug into shore power and you have this connected to a junction box there, then essentially you can heat water even while the vehicle is stationary, which is really cool. One more fun thing for you guys, we actually wanted to test this water system. Tomorrow we're gonna take the van out with the water in the tank completely cold, and then we're gonna drive the vehicle around for maybe 30 to 45 minutes, bring it up to temperature, and then test the water temperature for you guys. Also, we'll see how much hot water we actually get. It's a 5-gallon tank, but the water's scalding hot, so we're gonna mix it with cold water and we'll be able to get a sense of how much usable hot water the tank actually holds. And then the final thing we're gonna do is after we've heated up the water, we're gonna leave it sit for maybe 6 or 10 hours or so. And then we'll test the water temperature after it's been sitting, just to give you guys an idea of how well does the water tank hold the heat after the vehicle has been shut off. Let's head out. Good morning, everybody. So today is the day that we're gonna test the water heater in this van. Right now it's about 7:15 and I'm gonna drive the van to work, which is about 15 miles away. So that'll give us maybe 20 minutes on the road. The water in the tank is cold right now because the van's been sitting here for a couple days. So we're gonna drive it to work, and then we're gonna test the water temperature when we get there. All right, here we are inside the van, and we're about to test the hot water. So I have the mixer all the way to hot as possible, which typically you would not wanna leave this heater with the mixer all the way open to hot, simply because the water is gonna be way too hot. But I wanna see what the max temperature is gonna be. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 degrees.
That's really hot.
That's really hot. Scalding hot. That's way too hot. So that's why we would turn the mixer on the heater down to maybe 120. Then of course you also have a mixer here on the faucet to get it to the right temperature. Same thing in the shower. But yeah, basically just wanted to show you guys how hot the water gets. And that's important because if you want to have hot water tomorrow, and let's say you haven't run the van for 10 to 12 hours, since it's so hot after the van has been running, you should be able to have hot water, which we're going to test for up to 12 to 24 hours. I would say after 24 hours it's going to be warm, but after 12 hours it should still be hot enough to take a really hot shower. Basically at this point we're just going to let it sit and come back. Right now it's 9:53, so we'll come back at the end of the day and test the water temperature and see how it's done after a full work day. Whew, it is nice. It's so hot right now. We've got the Nomatic AC running to keep it cool in here while we do the video, which is awesome. If you guys haven't seen our video on Nomatic air conditioners, you should watch that. These things are amazing. They run straight off the batteries and they are cool. It's kicking out sub 60 degree air right now. We are back. It's been 7 hours approximately since we tested the water temperature, and we're gonna see what we're getting now after it being left without the engine running for 7 hours.
Oh, that's still so hot.
Yes, it is. So there you have it. 7 hours after shutting off the vehicle, the insulated tank kept the water temperature up above 110 degrees, which should definitely be hot enough if you wanted to take a hot shower. And just feeling it, yes, it's hot. Not as scalding as it was before, but still definitely serviceable for cleaning up. So there you have it. That's it. This is our favorite water heater right now. It runs straight off of the excess heat that you get from the engine, and we just think it's super smart. No moving parts. Every time you drive, there's really, really hot water, and it also stays warm for quite a while. So if you guys have any questions about this, please leave them in the comments. We'll try to answer them. I know for a lot of people, this is not their #1 go-to water heater solution for the vans, but it is for us. So we'd like to share with you why it's working for us, and also since we think the cost is really affordable compared to the other options, this is a smart idea. So thanks again. We will see you next week, and we love you from Vanland. Bye-bye. Katie told me to be more emotional.
That was so emotional. Wow.